bitches be talking about me thinking I ain't gonna go look on their page. I be looking at y'all page, and y'all can't talk about me because.
The caller says that there's a gash on the patient's neck. It looks like someone slashed her neck.
Radio calls paint a grim picture of how she was found.
Meet Kayla Hodgson, a young woman living her life in Florida. She had no idea that hundreds of miles away in New York, someone was watching her every move through the digital breadcrumbs left by modern technology. That someone was Sakina Thompson, a pregnant nail technician who had discovered something that would drive her to commit one of the most calculated murders you'll ever hear about.
You know that I throw hands, right? You know that I throw hands, right? You know that I throw hands, right? You know that I throw hands, right?
But here's what makes this case truly terrifying. Sakina didn't just stumble upon Kayla's existence. She actively hunted her down using GPS technology, tracked her movements, planned her attack, and executed it with cold precision. Then she did something that will shock you. She calmly returned to her normal life as if nothing had happened. The weapon wasn't a gun bought illegally or a knife purchased with criminal intent. The real weapon was an app on a phone, location data, and the obsessive mind of someone who refused to accept reality. Stay tuned as we reveal everything about this case. Drop a comment and let me know what you think about this story. Welcome to our channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. Like and share this video to help raise awareness and spread caution. Let's begin.
23-year-old Kayla was found dead in her Tamarack apartment. Up to this point, the Broward Sheriff's Office has only revealed few details about what happened.
Terry, Kayla's boyfriend, played a role he never knew he was playing. He became the unwitting connection between two women, one who loved him and one who would kill for him. The tragic irony? He had no idea his everyday movements were being monitored, recorded, and used to plan murder. The distance between New York and Florida should have been protection enough. State lines should have meant safety. But in our connected world, distance means nothing when someone has access to your location data. Sakina Thompson proved that geography is no longer a barrier when obsession meets technology. To understand how this tragedy unfolded, we need to meet the three people whose lives became fatally intertwined through technology and obsession. Kayla Hodgson was living the kind of life many young women dream about. Based in Florida, she had built a routine that brought her happiness and stability. She worked hard, maintained friendships, and had found love with someone who made her feel special. Kayla wasn't looking for drama or complications. She was simply trying to build a good life for herself in the Sunshine State. Kayla's relationship with Terry had brought joy into her life. They spent time together, shared experiences, and built the kind of connection that felt natural and genuine. She had no reason to suspect that this relationship would put her in danger. After all, Terry seemed like a regular guy who cared about her and enjoyed their time together. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away in New York, Sakina Thompson was living a completely different reality. As a nail technician, Sakina had built a career helping people look and feel their best. Her clients trusted her with their appearance, their conversations, and their time. She was skilled at her craft and had established herself in the competitive world of beauty services. But Sakina's life held complications that her clients never saw. She was pregnant, dealing with all the physical and emotional changes that pregnancy brings. More significantly, she was in a long-distance relationship with Terry, the same Terry who was building a connection with Kayla in Florida. The geographic distance between New York and Florida should have kept these three lives separate. Under normal circumstances, Sakina and Kayla would never have crossed paths. They lived in different states, moved in different circles, and had no natural reason to interact. But technology changed those rules entirely. GPS tracking, location sharing, and digital surveillance tools meant that physical distance no longer provided the protection it once did. Someone in New York could monitor activities in Florida with frightening accuracy. Apps designed for safety and convenience became tools for stalking and surveillance. The setup was deceptively simple. 3 people, 2 states, and 1 smartphone capable of tracking movements across hundreds of miles. None of them could have predicted how these elements would combine to create the perfect storm for murder. Kayla continued her routine in Florida, unaware that her movements were being monitored. Terry maintained his relationships without realizing the dangerous game he was playing. Sakina, driven by suspicion and enabled by technology, began to piece together a picture that would fuel her rage. Sakina gained access to Terry's location data through methods that remain part of the ongoing legal case. Whether she used shared accounts, installed tracking software, or accessed information through other means, the result was the same. She could monitor his movements in real time from hundreds of miles away. The power that this information gave her was intoxicating and dangerous. Suddenly, she could see exactly where Terry went, how long he stayed in each location, and what patterns emerged from his daily activities. She could track his work schedule, his social activities, and most importantly, any time he spent with other people. For someone already struggling with jealousy and insecurity, this level of access to information was like adding gasoline to a fire. Every location ping, every unexplained stop, every deviation from expected patterns became potential evidence of betrayal in Sakina's mind. The data revealed something that shattered Sakina's world. Terry was spending significant time at locations that weren't work, weren't his home, and weren't places she recognized. The GPS coordinates pointed to addresses in Florida that meant nothing to her, until she started investigating further. Modern technology made it easy for Sakina to connect location data to actual addresses, and from addresses to potential people. Social media, public records, and online directories allowed her to piece together information that would have been nearly impossible to gather just a generation ago. When Sakina discovered that Terry was regularly visiting locations connected to Kayla Hodgson, her worst fears were confirmed. The woman she had never met, living in a state she had never visited, was suddenly the focal point of all her rage and jealousy. The location data didn't just show that Terry was seeing someone else. It revealed patterns that suggested an ongoing relationship. Regular visits, extended time periods, overnight stays, all tracked and recorded by the same technology that was supposed to make life more convenient. For Sakina, seeing this information laid out in digital format must have felt like being slapped in the face repeatedly. Every data point represented a moment when Terry chose to be with Kayla instead of being honest about his relationship status. Every location ping was a betrayal. Every time duration was time stolen from her. But here's where this case takes a turn that separates it from typical relationship drama. Instead of confronting Terry directly or ending the relationship, Sakina began to focus her attention on Kayla. In her mind, Kayla had become the enemy, the obstacle preventing her from having the relationship she wanted. The GPS data had given Sakina something more valuable than just knowledge. It had given her Kayla's routine. She knew where Kayla lived, where she worked, where she spent her free time. She had studied Kayla's movements like a predator studying prey. What happened next reveals the true nature of Sakina Thompson's character and the dangerous depth of her obsession. Armed with detailed knowledge about Kayla's location and routine, Sakina didn't choose a path that most reasonable people would take. She didn't confront Terry directly, didn't demand explanations, and didn't simply end the relationship. Instead, she began planning something far more sinister. The decision to travel from New York to Florida wasn't made in a moment of passion. This wasn't a crime of sudden rage or heat-of-the-moment violence. Sakina had time to think, time to reconsider, time to choose a different path. But at every opportunity to step back from the brink, she chose to move forward with her plan. The pregnancy factor adds another layer of complexity to Sakina's mental state during this planning phase. Pregnancy hormones can intensify emotions and affect decision-making, but they don't turn normal people into killers. What they might do is amplify existing tendencies toward jealousy, possessiveness, and irrational thinking. Sakina's professional life as a nail technician required attention to detail, planning, and careful execution. These same skills that made her successful in her career were now being applied to planning a murder. She approached this trip with the same methodical mindset she used for her legitimate work. During the flight from New York to Florida, Sakina had hours to contemplate what she was about to do. Sitting in that airplane seat, she could have changed her mind. She could have used the time to call Terry and demand answers. She could have turned around when she landed and flown home, but she didn't. The most chilling aspect of this planning phase is that Sakina brought Terry with her on this trip. She convinced him to travel to Florida without revealing her true intentions. Terry thought he was going on a trip with his girlfriend, completely unaware that she planned to commit murder while they were there. What happened next represents one of the most brutal and calculated murders in recent memory. The confrontation between Sakina Thompson and Kayla Hodgson wasn't a fair fight between equals. It was a planned assassination carried out by someone who had studied her victim's routine and chosen the perfect moment to strike. The exact circumstances of how Sakina gained access to Kayla remain part of the ongoing legal proceedings, but the outcome was horrifyingly clear. This wasn't a brief altercation or a crime of sudden passion. What Sakina did to Kayla demonstrates a level of violence that goes far beyond what would be necessary to simply harm someone. Sakina didn't just attack Kayla, she destroyed her. The stabbing was brutal and repeated, indicating that this wasn't about quickly silencing a perceived threat. This was about unleashing every ounce of rage, jealousy, and hatred that had been building up during her obsessive monitoring of Terry's activities. But the stabbing wasn't enough for Sakina. In an act of pure savagery, she slashed Kayla's throat. This type of wound is designed to be fatal. There's no ambiguity about intent here. Throat slashing is an intensely personal form of violence that requires the attacker to be face-to-face with their victim during their final moments. The medical reality of these injuries means that Kayla's death was neither quick nor peaceful. She would have been conscious and aware during the attack, experiencing terror, pain, and the realization that she was about to die at the hands of someone she had never wronged. The psychological trauma of those final moments is almost impossible to comprehend. What makes this attack even more disturbing is that Kayla had no warning, no chance to defend herself, and no understanding of why this was happening to her. From her perspective, this was a completely random attack by a stranger. She never had the opportunity to know that her relationship with Terry had signed her death warrant. The physical evidence from the crime scene paints a picture of extreme violence. The number and nature of the stab wounds indicate that Sakina continued attacking long after it would have been clear that Kayla was mortally wounded. This suggests a level of rage that went far beyond rational anger about infidelity. The throat slashing, in particular, represents a deeply personal form of violence. This isn't how someone kills when they want to be quick or painless. This is how someone kills when they want their victim to suffer, when they want to watch the life drain from their eyes, when they want to ensure there's no possibility of survival. During these final moments, Kayla's entire life, her dreams, her relationships, her future plans, was being ended by someone whose only grievance was that Kayla had fallen for the same man she loved. The disproportion between the crime of dating Terry and the punishment of brutal murder reveals just how disconnected from reality Sakina had become. The attack took place while Terry was nearby, completely unaware that his girlfriend was committing murder. He had no idea that the woman he had brought with him to Florida was systematically destroying the woman he had been seeing. This level of compartmentalization and deception is truly chilling. After the brutal attack, Sakina had to transition from killer back to girlfriend. She had to clean herself up, hide any evidence of what she had done, and return to Terry as if nothing had happened. The psychological ability to make this transition demonstrates a level of emotional control that's deeply disturbing. Kayla Hodgson died alone, in pain and in terror, killed by someone who saw her as nothing more than an obstacle to be eliminated. Her final moments were spent experiencing violence from a stranger whose jealousy had transformed her into a monster. When it came time to return to New York, Sakina again demonstrated her calculating nature. She didn't rush to leave Florida or show signs of wanting to escape quickly. Instead, she maintained their original travel schedule, ensuring that their departure wouldn't seem suspicious or create questions about what had happened during their trip. Meanwhile, back in Florida, Kayla's absence was beginning to be noticed. Friends, family members, and co-workers started asking questions when she failed to show up for work or respond to communications. The process of discovering her body and launching a murder investigation was about to begin. When Kayla's body was finally discovered, the brutal nature of the attack immediately signaled to investigators that this was not a random crime. The multiple stab wounds and throat slashing indicated extreme personal violence, suggesting that the killer had a strong emotional motive for the attack. The crime scene evidence told a story of savage violence and calculated murder. The positioning of the body, the nature of the wounds, and a lack of signs of robbery or sexual assault pointed investigators toward looking for someone with a personal connection to the victim. Modern forensic technology meant that Sakina had left behind evidence she probably didn't even realize existed. DNA evidence, fingerprints, digital footprints, and surveillance footage from various locations would all play roles in building the case against her. The same GPS technology that Sakina had used to track Terry's movements now worked against her. Her phone's location data showed her presence in Florida during the time of the murder, creating a digital trail that investigators could follow to build their case. Terry's shock when investigators informed him about Kayla's murder and Sakina's involvement must have been overwhelming. He suddenly realized that the woman he thought he knew had used him as an unwitting accomplice in planning and executing a brutal murder. The arrest of Sakina Thompson marked the end of her brief period of freedom and the beginning of her confrontation with the justice system. When law enforcement officers finally caught up with her in New York, the evidence against her was overwhelming and undeniable. The charges brought against Sakina reflect the serious nature of her crimes and the premeditated nature of the attack. First-degree murder charges indicate that prosecutors believe they can prove Sakina planned Kayla's death in advance, traveled across state lines to commit the crime, and executed the murder with deliberate intent. First-degree murder is the most serious charge in the criminal justice system, carrying potential for life imprisonment or, in some jurisdictions, the death penalty. The fact that prosecutors chose this charge rather than lesser degrees of murder or manslaughter demonstrates their confidence in proving premeditation and intent. Sakina's pregnancy at the time of her arrest added another layer of complexity to her detention and legal proceedings. Pregnant inmates require special medical care and accommodations, and the stress of facing murder charges, while pregnant, creates additional challenges for everyone involved. Currently, Sakina Thompson remains in jail awaiting trial, held without bail due to the serious nature of the charges and the flight risk she represents. Having already demonstrated her willingness to travel across state lines to commit violence, she poses an obvious danger to public safety if released. Kayla Hodgson was more than just a victim in a true crime case. She was a young woman with dreams, relationships, and a future that was stolen from her by someone she had never wronged. Her only crime was falling for someone who was already in another relationship, hardly something that warranted a death sentence. The ripple effects of this murder extend far beyond the immediate tragedy. Kayla's family and friends must now live with the knowledge that someone they loved died alone, in terror and in pain. Terry must grapple with the realization that his actions contributed to this tragedy, and that he unknowingly helped transport a killer to her victim. Even Sakina's family, including her unborn child, will bear the consequences of her choices for the rest of their lives. The decision to transform jealousy into murder didn't just destroy Kayla's life. It devastated multiple families and communities. Most importantly, we must remember Kayla Hodgson not as a cautionary tale, but as a person whose life had value and meaning. Her memory deserves more than being reduced to a lesson about technology and obsession